We've been playing tons of Pokemon Sun and Moon. We've really been enjoying it. We know a lot of other people have. And while it is a really great game, some hardcore players aren't without their own complaints. So think of this list kind of as constructive criticism. We're here to bring you the 10 things Pokemon Sun and Moon players absolutely hate. Starting off at number 10, one thing we realize is getting a lot of hate is the new Pokedex. The new Pokedex is actually a living Pokedex because it's Rotom, the electric type Pokemon, inside of a frame, assuming a new form as a talkative Pokedex. And that's all well and good, I guess, because he can be chatty and informative when he wants to be, but it's just the fact that you're playing on a 3DS, and the game decides to give you on the bottom screen a pair of eyes constantly staring up at you at all times. Just a small little mini-map, and then the majority of the screen is taken up by the Pokedex's face and eyes. It doesn't really bother me personally too much, but I have seen a lot of people who have been handed the game say, wait, what the fuck is this? And you can't blame them, it doesn't really make any sense. But I guess if you really want to argue, does anything in Pokemon make sense? No. But does the Pokedex really have to be alive? I've seen a lot of people complaining. And at number 9, I've seen some big fans really arguing that Mega Evolutions make your Pokemon sound kind of crazy and awful and unfortunate. To a lot of people, the Pokedex descriptions just don't really make much sense, and it makes the Mega Evolutions sound pretty much terrifying. The Mega Evolutions are so powerful, and the descriptions kind of suggest that the Mega Evolve actually just drives the Pokemon insane, and it just seems like a big, crazy, intense, and painful process, not a joyful, fun evolution like the rest of the traditional evolution. For example, the description of Mega Gyarados describes that the Mega Evolution affects its brain and leaves no other function except the ability to burn things, while the Mega Salamence evolution also just describes it as the blood-soaked crescent. It's kind of messed up. It's a dumb and sad little thing to complain about, but that's the point of this video. And at number 8, this is going to vary for some people, but there's always that Pokemon that is just an absolute pain in the ass. And one of them in Pokemon Sun and Moon seems like a Lapras, because first of all, you have to catch it on the ocean, which as you probably know, the encounters come a little bit more far and few between. But not only that, apparently the Lapras itself in the ocean has less than a 5% encounter rate. Not only that, but it's just a notoriously hard Pokemon to catch with a very low capture rate as well. Not only that, but you can find yourself fighting a long, hard battle with one, trying to get it down with a false swipe, and then the Lapras goes and offs itself with a Perish song. God damn it. So if you're trying to fill out that Pokedex and you need a Lapras, you might have a tough time. I've been searching and asking people what one of the more difficult Pokemon to catch is in this game, and a lot of people have said it's the Lapras. And at number 7, in case all of you guys don't know this, the new Pokemon Sun and Moon takes place on a chain of islands inspired by the Hawaiian Islands. It's called Lola, and it's really interesting enough that because considering it's a chain of islands, the fishing in Lola just kind of straight up sucks. I've seen a lot of people out there describing the fishing as just a straight up pain in the ass that's just not really worth it. I don't know if anyone in Sun and Moon actually uses the fishing unless they absolutely have to. It's just really time consuming and most of the stuff you catch just isn't worth it. And that's unfortunate because fishing in some Pokemon games hasn't been this bad. But I just really don't see a lot of people bothering to fish much in Sun and Moon at all. And at number 6, another very difficult Pokemon to catch is Tapu Fini. It's such a pain, and I know I've struggled with this one quite a bit personally. First things first, she has muddy water, so your accuracy is probably lowered extremely, and most of the time if you're trying to use that move that you use to catch all the Pokemon, False Swipe, you're probably gonna have a hard time even getting it to connect. Not only that, but she also has Aqua Ring, which makes it technically impossible to keep her at 1 HP, so it just really makes for not a good time. And at number 5, another thing we've seen lots of little complaints on is something that I think is really just possible because of how story-based and focused Sun and Moon really is. There's lots of cutscenes, there's lots of talking to characters, and there's lots of just general things going on, which means a lot of times you'll find yourself in a situation during a hard-fought battle trying to progress in the game. You'll scrape by and end the battle with a bunch of beat-up and bruised Pokemon with little health, and you'll use all your potions and revives, only to walk 10 feet and talk to a story character who will say, "Oh hey, give me your Pokemon, I'll heal them for you." And then you have a fully healed team even though you just spent half of your shit getting them up to snuff. I don't know about you guys, but that seems to happen quite a bit. I've seen a lot of people on websites actually recommend not spending all your money on potions and revives just because of how frequent this is during certain parts of the game. It's funny because although this does happen quite a bit, Pokemon Sun and Moon does still manage to be really more challenging than most other Pokemon games. And at number 4, let's talk about getting spammed. Now, to be honest, this is always a Pokemon problem. It's been a problem with battles since the very beginning. But thanks to some moves or some tactics, and you just find yourself being bombarded and unable to do anything in a battle where you're basically stuck in a stalemate or a complete rock and a hard place, it just totally sucks. I've seen one example of a random trainer battle with a Driftloon that just keeps spamming Minimize, only to just do an exploit with Flinch and Astonish and just basically make it an impossible battle. Personally, I've also gotten stuck in a lot of battles with Ghastlies who just spam Spite, and it's terrible. I've seen some people talk about getting stuck in battles with Ghastlies that last over 50 turns. That, to me, shiny isn't fun. You'll probably notice that this can happen to you a lot in the early game. It just seems like there's a higher proclivity for that to happen, especially if you're using like a Munchlax. And while it does sound like a complaint and whining, I guess if you think about it, it's actually kind of good. You know, random wild Pokemon and random trainers are kind of stepping their game up and making the game more challenging. It's just sometimes when you get stuck in that rut, it's frustrating. And at number 3, this is probably just gonna happen every time a new Pokemon game releases and there's a lot of newbies playing, but that Global Trade Center, also known as the GTS, is just absolutely filled to the brim with awful, terrible spam trades. I've seen people put up random starter Pokemon and Pokemon you catch in an early game, proposing a trade for a legendary Pokemon. Like, what are you doing? Stop wasting everybody's time. Stop wasting space in the GTS. That's not gonna get you anywhere. You're not gonna end up with a shiny or anything like that by dumping a bunch of Pidgeys in here. And at number 2, something that has frustrated a ton of people, but again, it probably equates to just the added challenge that is Sun and Moon, is that whole call for help thing. When you're in a battle with a random Pokemon in the wild, there is a tendency for that Pokemon to use the new move, Call for Help, which summons another Pokemon of the same type to fight against you in a battle. So basically it's 2 against 1. And that's fine because usually you can brute force your way out, but it does often make catching a Pokemon 10 times harder and more tedious. I do really like the added challenge of it though. It is a nice surprise and it's cool. But the one thing I don't like about it is that it doesn't actually count as an attack used during a turn. The Pokemon you're fighting against is free to use whatever move they want and then they can call for help. Why doesn't that call for help count as a turn? I don't know. I think it should. I think that's kind of bullshit. I've seen a lot of people complaining with this and taking issue with this, but I've noticed it a lot with newer players who haven't played a Pokemon game in a long time, have come into Sun and Moon suddenly expecting it to be the same old cakewalk, and now all of a sudden Pokemon are summoning other Pokemon. It's just the game getting more challenging, and you know what? We're getting older, so I think we do need more of a challenge. But hey, that's just me. And at number 1, the thing Pokemon Sun and Moon players honestly hate the most, probably going to be one of the starter Pokemon. Let's be real, okay? When they announced the starter Pokemon for Sun and Moon, the internet went wild with hatred towards at least one of these poor little Pokemon. First of all, I'm sorry, there's Popplio. Popplio looks really, really stupid. But I've also been on record talking a lot of smack about Popplio. On the flip side, there's also Litten, who is basically like a little kitten. Maybe you don't like cats. I've seen a lot of people who don't like cats hate hard on this Pokemon. Also, the fact that it has the word lit in the name is pretty gross. And then of course there's Rowlet, who seems to have gotten the least amount of hate, but he's got a little bow tie, he looks a little suspicious, and he could be a pretentious hipster. But he's also just an owl. I'm reading into it way too much, but what the point I'm trying to make is that everyone hates at least one of these Pokemon, and they probably feel pretty strongly about it. So honestly, that's what I think new Pokemon Sun and Moon players hate the most. But guys, this was a list of constructive complaints and grievances from myself and other people who do play Pokemon Sun and Moon. And now we want to hear from you guys in the comments. What problems do you have with the game? You know, you can completely love the game, but still have some issues with it. So we want to hear them down in the comments. You guys know the deal. If you had a good time with this video, maybe you want to see more Pokemon videos, clicking the like button helps us out a ton, and we appreciate it. If you're new, subscribing is a good idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.